Hi, I'm Eric Poulin.
And I'm Robin Poulin.
We're the co-founders of Calendar Budget, and welcome to the Calendar Budget podcast.
I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like. I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like.
Raising children is so easy, everybody should do it.
Definitely. Bring on the children. More the merrier.
Raising children can be difficult, if we're being honest, and training them with regards to financial stuff, financial matters, is actually super important because the schooling system does an abysmal job of such a thing.
They are trying to do things about it. I find that they are changing some of the curriculum, but not in the right places, not enough details, not at the right time frame. But at the same time, home is the place to learn.
That's right. Home is the first school.
Yeah.
That's where they're observing their parents, they're observing their caregiver. That's how they learn to speak, how to
Walk, run, etc.
do everything.
Cook.
And everything that we do as parents, as caregivers to kids, even if you're an older sibling, everything that we do reflects on what they turn into. We're totally responsible. Even if you don't feel like you should be responsible because I didn't ask my parents to have another kid, if you're an older sibling. Or if you're a spouse, I didn't want to have another kid, my spouse did. Or whatever the reason, doesn't matter. The reasons are irrelevant.
This child has way more strong will than all the rest of them.
Yeah, all the more reason that your example makes all the difference. And the way that you set an example, of course, all things in life matter probably more, a lot more than your financial stuff. But since this podcast is about budgeting and financial matters, how you spend your money, how you deal with money matters a lot. Because they're going to get more from what you teach them, what we teach them, than they're going to get from anywhere else. More than from their friends, more than from school. So what we do matters tremendously.
One of those things to consider is even with the lack of money, how do you react to that? Are your children feeling that pinch, or do they not even notice the lack of money in the house?
Exactly. It just matters so much, I can't even overemphasize it. But the kids learn with their eyes, with their ears, but mostly with action.
I find even for me, I'm an adult now, but I'm still very visual. I learn much easier by following and watching what you're doing, and then trying it for myself with a little bit of coaching kind of thing on the side to say, hey, try this, try this.
Yeah. When I say that they learn by action, I mean they learn by what you're doing, but they're going to be observing what you do. But they're going to learn mostly by what they do.
Yeah.
And
they need to test it.
Their first forays into handling money and spending money, if that's not guided effectively, that's going to set a precedent that will very often lead them into their childhood, and that's the way they end up being.
Something very amusing about this, though, is with us being very visual in our learning and understanding, the movement of money these days isn't visual usually.
Yeah, exactly.
Digital.
We're going to get into that. A lot of things are invisible these days. But there's a famous quote. It's actually a Bible verse. Not that I'm much for Bible quoting. But this is a verse from Proverbs. It says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Some good wisdom words from old King Solomon. Yeah. And that's true. What you train a kid in the early stages of their life, they'll tend to stick to.
They will have that foundation to fall to.
At least the little things. And, the big things too. You know what? Kids are agents unto themselves, and they'll make their own choices, and when they get older, they'll make their own choices as well. But a lot of what we teach them in the home tends to propagate generation to generation, which is why, obviously, it's important not to be doing violence and things like that. But with your money habits, that matters a lot too. If you are terrible with money, your kid's going to learn to be terrible with money. If you're private about money and you never say anything about it, they're going to learn that money is a taboo subject and it's not to be spoken of or maybe even dealt with. And that can be devastating.
They'll just hide it under the carpet kind of thing, do whatever the world they feel like, and have no idea what's happening with their money.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we all have a responsibility for teaching children, even if they're not our own.
Yeah.
We're all role models in one way or another, whether by choice or not by choice. Kids look at us, they're observing what's going on. Even if you're not family, they're observing and they're taking it all in. Mm-hmm. And what we do with our money matters a lot. So, wanted to talk about then from a kid's perspective. What does a kid see in terms of what is money and where does it come from? For kids, in our generation especially, as you alluded to, money is invisible.
Yeah.
You hardly ever see actual cash these days.
Yeah, when we were kids, that was what we usually saw was cash going around.
Yep, exactly. But these days, it would be not irregular for a kid to never see cash.
Yeah. Usually.
Maybe not exactly, but
pretty close.
Almost always it's a debit
or
credit card swipe, or an online transaction.
Transfers.
And they're not seeing money. All they're seeing is that we go to a store, we collect items that we're buying, mm-hmm. and at the end, we take out a piece of plastic and touch a screen and walk away.
Or sometimes things are just showing up at the house, Amazon.
Exactly. It just gets shipped to you. Or if it is cash, you walk up to this machine, put your piece of plastic in, and out comes cash. It's like that's where you get your free money. It's a money tree.
Magic hole in
the
wall.
The magic hole in the wall.
It gives cash like a genie.
Yeah, they don't see where that money comes from. It's not like the old days, even before our time, when you used to get paid by check or by cash, and you'd come home with a wad of cash, and it was easy to see the flow of money.
Yeah.
Now, you don't see that at all. All you see is that there's an endless supply of money, or maybe an endless want of money, and that your plastic either has it or doesn't have it. They don't see what's going on there. Mm-hmm. So, that's what, from a kid's perspective, what they see that we buy stuff. They see that we go to a self-checkout stand. We just take our stuff off the shelves at the store, totally unsupervised, go to a self-checkout thing, and just swipe them over a scanner, touch plastic, and walk out of the store.
Yep.
What are we teaching our children? You could just take things and leave. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a whole process that matters a lot. And as you mentioned, oftentimes things are happening online. Packages just magically arrive at the house, and it's like Christmas every day of the week. Mm-hmm. There's always a package. So, other things that they see from their perspective, mom and dad get whatever they want, whenever they want. If they want a bag of chips, they go out and get one. If they want food, a la grocery store, they go out and get it. If they want
new set of headphones,
or they need a tool to do something, they just go out to the store and get it. And so there's an endless supply of adults getting whatever they want from a child's perspective. What they don't see is what's behind all of that. So what's behind this piece of plastic in the ATM? How did the money get there? And all the sacrifice that went into saving this money and working your job for it, and all the labor and the taxes that get taken off, and online shopping and comparison shopping. They don't see that. All they just see is that a package arrived.
They wouldn't notice probably that beforehand you used to do it in a different way because you didn't have that item and you didn't have the money for it. So
exactly.
When they were babies, you did without.
Exactly.
And now you have the money, you can enjoy the luxury.
Yeah. So the point is, if we don't point out these things, it's going to remain invisible for children. And they will go on thinking that money grows on trees, mm-hmm. or lives in plastic,
Yes.
And that they can get a piece of plastic someday, and all the things they could ever want will just be available through this piece of plastic.
And then they could be oblivious to any repercussions, or they can see the repercussions and then just always frustrated and annoyed and depressed because they can't do the same things that they were just doing 5 years ago, living with mom and dad.
Yeah, exactly. So other things that they don't see is an adult reviewing their bank account, checking to see if you have enough money to make a purchase. All they see is the purchase, because most adults don't tend to, come, child, let's log into my bank account together. They don't do that. Yeah. For whatever reason, it's like a taboo subject. And I don't know why that is, because it's a family matter. Your income's a family matter, and it should be taught in such a way that it's not scary. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be so ashamed of your finances that you're not willing to show. And if you're in a difficult situation financially, all the more reason to show the child what and how to, like what you're doing to get out of it, how it's going to happen, and teach them to avoid the situation that you may have inadvertently gotten yourself into. Mm-hmm. So all that reviewing, the budgeting, that flow of, I put in 8 hours of work every day for 5 days a week, and then every 2 weeks I get a paycheck. And it's because of that labor, and they don't see that. They just know that, oh, dad goes to work in the morning, and when I come home from school, he gets home an hour later, or something like that. And then magically we have money. Yeah.
Now that our kids are a little bit older, the older teenagers, they're getting their own paychecks now. And they're seeing the things that happen with your paycheck. There is a gross income, and then there's money that gets taken off. But wait, I get paid this much an hour, so I should be getting this much. What's happened with this money?
Yeah, exactly.
So somewhere between taxes, EI payments, or whatever the government collection is, and other funds that the company is putting money towards, that is to help benefit you as their employee.
They don't see any of that.
Yeah.
In fact, if a kid doesn't understand what it takes to live, to run a household, to own all the possessions that you have and do the events and activities that you have, if they don't understand that all comes at a price, then they're just going to think they can have all that whenever they want. And they'll, like you said, they'll end up confused and disappointed when they are told that they can't have things. Mm-hmm. Because why not? You, mom and dad, always get what you want whenever you feel like it. They don't, like I said, they don't see the curbing of desires. They don't see us deprioritizing our wants because we need to buy diapers, or because Sally is going to gymnastics lessons, or whatever the case is.
New ballet shoes. Yep.
All of these things, they don't see it. All they just see is that we get whatever we want. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to help the child understand what it takes to run a household. Mm-hmm. And that this money has to come from somewhere. That money is, that's the thing, money is a concept, right? It's not a real thing. Money is not even real. It's, okay, you get a coin, but that's just a piece of metal. And you get $1, and that's just a piece of paper.
There's value attached to it, because us as a society say, this is the value of that.
Exactly. Everybody in the country and internationally has this unspoken agreement that this piece of paper holds this much value. Mm-hmm. And this coin has this much value. And we exchange that value for goods or services. Mm-hmm. And it's, I mean, we're going back to like the very core basics of what even is money. And do you know why we have money? Like, I did this economics exercise when I was in university, and they'd sit us down and they split us into like 5 different groups. They're like, okay, you live on an island, and then your group produces all the food for the island. Or you collect all the fruits and vegetables. You're collectors. And you guys are the hunters, like Lord of the Flies, right? Except there was no death. You're the hunters, and you spin clothing, you make cloth, and you do this other thing.
Another one for housing, probably.
Yeah, maybe you build houses for people.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, and you're in the hunter group. Great, you have unlimited supply of meat, but guess what? You can't survive on meat alone. You need vegetables. Mm-hmm. It would be nice to have clothes so you're not hunting naked, and a place to sleep at night. And
yes.
so you need to get what everybody else has. And so the economics professor just let us figure it out as a society. Okay, how do we do it? There's no money. Money is not a thing here. You just landed on an island, and this is what you're specializing in.
That's
so
cool.
You're in the hunter group, and you need vegetables. How do you get it? And the class is like, well, we'll trade. You'll give me some vegetables, I'll give you some meat. And they're like, okay, how much? And you figure it out. We're like, well, it takes us this long to hunt an animal. It takes you this long. And so you figure out an exchange. For one animal, you're going to give us so many coconuts and mangoes or whatever. And you're like, great, okay, awesome. Hunter, how are you going to get shelter? And you're like, well, same thing. We'll exchange from them. And they're like, okay, great. And they figure out the exchange rate. And then you get to this one point where you're like, you know what? Hunters, well, let's go to the different group. Well, let's go to the housing group. Okay, housing group, you need some food. You want to exchange with the hunters. Great, you did your exchange. They already have a house now. They don't need a house again, but you still need to eat. How are you going to eat? And then, we're scratching our faces a little bit and going, how are we going to do this? And we are like, okay, well, what if the people in the fruit, they don't have a house yet, so we can give them a house, they'll give us some of their fruit, and then we can give the fruit to the hunters. And so we're starting to form a little bit of exchange here, and you can see how currency is being developed by the goods and services. And eventually you got to a situation where it was too complicated. Like, you had stuff that this person didn't need, but you need what they have. And you'd have to go through like 5 different exchanges to make it happen. And they're like, this is ridiculous. Why don't we just create a collection of shells that will assign this shell is worth 1 animal and it's worth 30 coconuts. And suddenly currency is born.
Cool.
So it's pretty...
Makes sense.
It's a pretty cool example that they put us through in a university environment where we gave birth to currency.
That's cool.
So it's no wonder that currency exists. It's the way to solve, right, the exchange of goods and services, and without people giving you exactly what you need.
Yeah.
So you have this. You can't explain that to a child. That was a university level exchange. It's too difficult. But we can teach them a little bit at a time how it works, that it costs this much to run the house, and when we run out of money, we can't buy other things. And it's not just an endless supply on a piece of plastic that's totally invisible. Mm-hmm. There's work. There's stuff behind all of this. And that's what it takes to train up a child.
You might think that, okay, according to this age, we'll teach them this or teach them that.
Yeah.
But it's not always according to age, because each child is different. They learn at different levels. And you might find one child is just a brainiac, one child's a little simpler, that they like to take their time to divulge and learn about things and think it over more.
Yeah, exactly. You have to teach them at their level, for sure.
Yes.
And even people who are the same age, like you say, might be at different levels. Yeah. So you as a parent or as a person responsible for a child, you need to kind of understand where they're at. If you're not sure, take a wild guess and you'll find out pretty quick what their level is at.
And it might be a different style of teaching as well. If it's not working with just plain old words and mathematics, get out some things that are going to represent.
Sure, count their number, like bring out some toys and say, it will cost 3 of your toys in order to go out to dinner with daddy.
Yeah.
Or to go to the movies.
Yep.
Are you willing to pay that?
Yes.
whatever it takes to teach them. But if you can communicate that, or I should say, when you can communicate that to such a level that there's understanding there, suddenly the incessant demands for new toys disappear, or at least reduced, because they have an understanding now that money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, that money is labor in paper form.
Yes.
And daddy has to work more hours before I can have more of this paper to go buy the teddy bear that I want, or whatever the thing is.
Yep.
When a child comes to that understanding, like when the light goes on about that, suddenly conversations are very different, and you can have less stress in the house because they're going to not ask all the time. They may even start self-regulating how much they consume, certainly how much they demand on things.
They gain a sense of responsibility that I can contribute to. I can make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. For anything that's like a variable cost.
Yep.
If I don't leave the food out and let it spoil, that's actually money in our pockets. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I should say the other way around is like burning money otherwise if you just left it out. If you can equate this action that you took when you broke the mirror, or like when you broke the window because you threw your baseball at it, we have to repair that. And it doesn't just come from the window store for nothing. Like, daddy or mommy have to work for 12 hours to pay for that window. Mm-hmm. And that's 12 hours of our life that we can't get back now. Not to make the child feel guilty or anything, but it's healthy to have an understanding of this cash flow. Where does it all come from? And make the invisible very visible.
And the idea as well is you don't make them feel guilty when they do something that's adverse. What you do is you help them understand the consequences, that it affects more than them, that it affects the bottom pocket, and it affects the whole family. Maybe you're planning on going on a vacation. Mm-hmm. That we're going to need to put on the vacation on a hold now because we want to be able to help repair this.
Yep.
So we understand this happened by accident. So what are some things you can do to help prevent these things?
Yeah. And
help walk them through, instead of making them feel like they're a heel,
yeah.
Walk them through the understanding.
And if the conversation is, the child is going to jump to the conclusion of, well, I want to work to help make money for the family. They're not going to be able to do that. But that's another opportunity for discussion around education and skills. And
yes.
And who knows, depending on their age, maybe they actually can help. Like if they're in their teens, they may be able to start a small business or get a part-time job. Mm-hmm. Every family situation is a little bit different. And I've seen where sometimes the kids are contributing to the household income to pay for things.
Yeah. And something to add to their understanding is to be able to work smart and not always harder. Work hard too. But working harder doesn't always equate to more income. If you get an education, if you teach them that education changes the ability to increase your income, then they have more money in their pocket by working smarter.
So along that line, sometimes kids are taught that working harder not only doesn't make you more money, it doesn't do anything. It's a union mentality, right? Not to bash everybody who's in a union, but I've seen this so many times that why would I work harder? I'm getting paid an hourly rate no matter what. So why would I work twice as hard to make the same wage I would be making anyway? Mm-hmm. That's not the kind of lesson you want to teach your children, right? You want to teach people to be hardworking. In an upcoming podcast, we're going to go over some data that shows that the way people process in their minds about receiving gratification, mm-hmm. and how much sacrifice they put into that, and the labor that they put into that, and the education that goes into it and everything, that can affect your life in drastic ways. So the last thing you want to be teaching is that laziness is the way. That's not the way.
Or even the limitation on education, that it will affect what you can accomplish.
That's right.
Not always, Other people have found other routes that work for their understanding.
Yeah, I mean, lots of entrepreneurs, for example, are dropouts, but that also comes with a big risk. So there's lots to be taught. There's endless things to teach a child when it comes to finances and, you know, just economics and business and all of that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But to keep today's podcast a little short so that we don't make a 4-hour-long podcast about teaching kids, I think we should end by talking about when is the right time to start teaching kids about money. For most cases, the answer is right now. Mm-hmm. You're already too late. Not too late. You're not too late, but you're already at the stage where you should start. I think the consensus, if there was a survey done years ago, in the 90s, I think, people were asked, what age do you start teaching your kid about money? And I think the consensus among parents was around grade 1. So that's, what age are people in grade 1? Like 5?
5, 6.
4, 5?
5 or 6.
5 or 6?
Yeah,
I guess 4
depending
would
on when
be
they start school.
Would be earlier. So that's about the age, and you know, you're probably there. If you're listening to this, if you have younger children, then you know that it's going to be coming very soon. Mm-hmm. So get your teaching cap on, because the kids need to know stuff. Anything else that you want to cover for today's episode before we dive into it more deeply next week?
Just like we were saying, that with the children, to involve them in the planning of the groceries, the planning of family vacations, the planning of how are we going to eliminate some of our expenses to pay down debt and things like that. When you involve them, they feel more confident and they can move forward and make money decisions themselves wisely. And just the sense of accomplishment, like, you know what, look at our family, we just accomplished this.
Yeah.
And they feel that sense of accomplishment as well.
Yeah, make the kid a first level part of the family, right? And involve them in this. Don't make that invisible process of you planning the vacation and doing all the calculations. Like, that's such a valuable teaching tool.
Yeah.
The point of today's podcast is make that invisible process visible. Mm-hmm. Bring it up to the surface and make a point to show it. You can't just do it in a public area. Like, hey, Jim, hey, Sally, come on over and we're going to plan our vacation. Get them excited about where you're going to go, but then say, you know what? It's going to cost us $200 a night to stay at a hotel. Mm-hmm. How much do you think it's going to cost us if we stay for a whole week? Let them do the simple math and then start adding the numbers up. We need to eat as well. That's going to cost money. And we're going to go into Disneyland. You know, what are we going to do while we're there? Suddenly the numbers start adding up. And when you get to a total number, you can be like, all right, that number that we came up with for this vacation, that's 160 hours of daddy's work or mommy's labor. And so she's going to have to work for a whole month just to make that happen. And that's if she wasn't helping pay for the food in the house, which she is. So it might take us some while to save up for that. And then you can put it like on a whiteboard or something. Like if you have guests come over, maybe you don't want to be that open about it. But private within a family, like you can have a spot where you're like tracking this so the kids can see. We're that much closer.
Yeah.
You know?
Savings fund. How are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. So start young and make this invisible process that so many of us find taboo or we're ashamed about it. Just got to get over that, my peeps. Got to get over that and show it, make it visible. Because that's the only way to train people, is to let them see, let them participate.
Agreed.
Until next time, when we dive deeper into the depths of teaching children finances, happy budgeting.
Happy budgeting.
I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like. I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like.